This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
Welcome everyone to the FRC Roundtable. My name is Scott Davis. I'm a mentor for Team 2052.
And my name is Ephomia. I'm a senior on Team 2052. I'm also co-captain this year, and I do most of my work with the programming sub-team. And I just want to welcome everyone to tonight's FRC Roundtable. But before we start, just a few housekeeping notes. First off, our roundtable is recorded on YouTube, which Scott just referenced, but there is a new separate FRC Roundtable channel. So make sure to go take a look at that afterwards and to look at past episodes. But also thinking about that, we'd love for everyone to have their cameras on, especially because these videos are going to be up for future reference later on. Especially when you're talking, it'd be nice to see your face and have your camera on during that. But we also respect student privacy. So if you have any privacy concerns, always feel free to keep your camera off or change your Google Meet name. You could do like initials or your last name, anything else that makes you feel safe while you're on the roundtable, while knowing that the videos will be publicly available on YouTube. And also going off of that, all participation in the roundtable is completely voluntary, but we ask that you be 13 years or older to be on the call. There's more information on our website, team2052.com/roundtable. I'll put some links in the chat later on, but there's information on there about the roundtable as well as the complete privacy policy. And you can also use the website to sign up for the mailing list. And to host future sessions, there's a Sign Up Genius on there. So if you're interested in hosting your own session, you can access that through our team website. And we're also on Spotify now, so if you prefer that platform to listen to your podcast, you can find us on there as well. And so before we get started today, we have a new segment, What's on the Wiki? So for some context, historically, Nightcrawler's gotten a lot of questions, mostly about how we run the program, how we choose captains and mentors, how we pack for events, things like that. And so we're working to share more details about that in a more structured and organized way. So you can find more information about that on our website at team2052.com/wiki. I'm actually going to share my screen now and we can look at what's up there right now. And we're going to work on highlighting one section of the wiki every week on the roundtable. So I don't know if I can share while the slide shows up. Is that okay if I take over the screen for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Is this working? Can you guys see my
Yep.
screen? Okay, perfect. So just to go through the wiki real quick and what's up right now, we have about the wiki. So essentially, again, there's going to be more pages posted on here over time, and we're working to get different mentors and students to add sections about things that they know a lot about. So this is mostly information for us about how to add different pages. Scott set up this whole system, so it's a lot easier for us to continue adding on as time moves by. But what we have up right now, we have competition prep, a whole section on how we pack, including full pit, off-season pit, even partial packing. So this would be like competitions like state. But we recommend students to pack for overnight competitions. And then we also have information about week 0. Then we have a leadership section up now. We talk about captain selection, the process for that, both in terms of the students, what they would need to do for interviews and interest, and then also working with mentors onboarding. So this includes how to become a mentor on Nightcrawler, and then what it looks like for a mentor to be on the team throughout fall and also winter and spring, and then broken up into build programming, more than robots. So yeah, you can tell there's a lot of information on here. We're just going to keep adding on to that. So a lot of the questions that we get frequently are probably answered on here. And then the section that we're going to highlight today is the mini trials section because of the appropriate timing now that we're in the midst of that season. And so we have the overview, what mini trials is, some history about the game. And then this part is talking more about how Nightcrawler runs mini trials on our team because we use it to get through a lot of training, hands-on training, especially as we move into the winter season. So we talk about how we organize our team, and then also how we have mentors and captains play their role, but also let new students get a lot more hands-on work and time with the robots. And then again, building fall training around that. We also have our season outline. So this kickoff schedule is something that we started implementing, I think, like last year. But this is essentially what we do for the actual game manual release in January. So it kind of shows how we model our mini trials after the real season to, again, make sure that new students are really prepared for that. Then we even talk about following meetings and to-do items. So I think especially because we've been talking a lot about mini trials recently, and a lot of the teams in this area are working on that. This is probably a good section to reference. Also for new teams that are interested in using mini trials for their team later on. Okay, let me stop presenting. But yeah, I'll put a link for that in the chat as well. Okay, now let's get to the actual show. Tonight's session is hosted by Ellery Scriver.
Eli
Tell
is
me how to say
fine.
your name. Eli?
Scriber,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry. Okay, Eli Scriver. So we all know that at First Robotics events, everyone plays a really important role in curating a positive, safe, and inclusive environment. And that includes for mentors, participants, students, spectators. And so Eli is going to talk more about how we can equip ourselves to respond appropriately to any situations that may arise during these events. And just make sure that our actions and others align with the core values of FIRST, most importantly, gracious professionalism and cooperation. And so thank you for coming on the roundtable tonight, Eli. The floor is yours.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I want to start out just introducing myself. My name is Eli Scriver. I'll be your facilitator this evening, but I would love to have other voices come around, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the group agreement. But this is a bystander intervention and de-escalation training developed specifically for you guys, so specifically for FIRST. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a certified sexuality educator and bystander intervention educator. I am also involved in middle and high school competition. I'm the assistant coach of the speech team at the Math and Science Academy here in Woodbury, Minnesota. So this is very near and dear to my heart. I know that we all just want to have the best experience for our participants and for one another. And I really just want to propose a set of skills for you today that you may or may not find helpful. But having that kind of scaffolding and having a way of thinking about intervention is my goal for you tonight. So we'll talk about what it means to be a bystander, how to decide when to intervene in a conflict, how to assess your own skills and strengths. I will be using examples, some hypothetical. Most of them are pulled from actual experiences that people have had in FIRST competitions. So I'm hoping that it's relevant. However, I would really encourage you to bring up anything that has happened to you before, that you've heard from others, or that you could see as being a situation that you might want to intervene in, or that somebody else might want to intervene in, and we can talk through it together. So my goal here is to be as relevant for you folks as possible, and just to be able to provide some of that background in bystander intervention that might help with decision making as a group. Okay, so just a couple of things before we start. I have a few group norms I like to set. One is mutual respect. That mostly means we allow one another to speak. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. We trust each other's expertise and our own experiences. Challenging your assumptions. We'll talk a lot in bystander intervention about what we assume about other people and how that influences the way we make decisions. And I want you to be very reflectful of those assumptions, but accept them as well. So we'll challenge them, we'll talk about them, we'll think about them. Be open-minded, see if you can engage with curiosity when you disagree or doubt something. Remember who's in the room. Everyone has had some kind of experience with conflict, whether that's minor interpersonal conflict, whether that's conflict on a large scale between groups, whether it's violent conflict or not. Everyone's coming here with a history that you don't know. And we're talking about hypothetical situations, but all hypothetical situations have some root in truth and the experiences of people who might be in the room with us. And then ask questions. This is that big thing. We all know how it feels to be talked at for 60 minutes. It's not fun. It's pretty boring. My hope is that you'll ask questions and chime in with your experiences, not just because it helps you understand and retain sort of the skills that we're talking about, but also because it helps the other people around you. If they hear voices other than mine, it helps your brain have something to grab onto. So please feel more than free to ask questions as we go. This isn't a structured with a Q&A at the end. You are always more than welcome to pop into the chat. I'm a big fan of the chat. And if you do go off mute to ask a question, I just ask that you introduce yourself with your name beforehand. Sometimes it doesn't pop you up, and so I can't see you and your little picture because I have like 5 things going on my screen right now. So introduce yourself if you do talk. I would love to hear from you. Okay, questions before we get started. Awesome. Okay, so if we all are familiar with sending a reaction, the little smiley face at the bottom of your screen, pick whatever you want by a show of hands. I just want to know if anyone here has done bystander intervention training before. Okay, cool. Yeah. I didn't even think about a thumbs down emoji. Perfect. 1 yes. Great. This is designed for people who haven't ever done bystander intervention trainings before. So that's perfect. Great. This is a bystander intervention training. So my hope is that you have some idea of what a bystander is. Can anybody give me, either in the chat or out loud, your quick basic definition of what a bystander might be?
Usually the context that I hear it in is someone who's like on the side or watching some kind of scenario or interaction happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. Someone who witnesses something, an event and an interaction, but isn't directly involved in it. So if you are watching something happen, if you hear about something happen, usually we're talking about like as it's happening. So you might not be a bystander if you're watching a video of something that happened a while ago, but if you are actively watching something, you're a bystander, but if you're not directly involved. So then this, frankly, made up word here, upstander. Any guesses on what we might be trying to get at by coining a new word, upstander?
Eli, this is Scott. Is this maybe someone who injects themselves into something they're witnessing?
Yeah, this is a bystander who intervenes, is an upstander, who stands up, who gets up, all of those things. Yeah, an upstander is a bystander who steps in, they acknowledge that somebody needs to step up and they choose to do that. So that is what an upstander is. My hope today is not to turn all situations where you're a bystander into you being an upstander, but to help you figure out a personal sort of set of decision-making tools for figuring out when it's time to step up in a situation like that. What do we know about bystanders? Has anyone heard of the bystander effect?
My understanding is the more people watching something, the less something is going to be done about it. Like if somebody's been hit by a car and nobody is going to render aid if there's too many people watching.
Yeah, that is the basic sort of general definition of the bystander effect. The bystander effect as a concept has been around since the 1960s. It was coined after the murder of Kitty Genovese. And a lot of people know her story because out of that came this sociological and psychological theory of the bystander effect. I will say, since the 1960s, there have been thousands of studies of the bystander effect. Most of them indicate that the more people witness something, the less likely it is that people will step in, will intervene, will choose to get involved in a situation that needs intervention. The problem with the bystander effect is that we know now that it doesn't describe the whole picture of human behavior. So the bystander effect was proposed in 1968. Most studies since the 60s focused on hypothetical situations or lab conditions where they would bring people in specifically to be participants in a psychological or sociological study. Until 2019, most of what we knew about the bystander effect was in lab conditions, not based on people's actual experiences. After 2019, we started to look at more real life footage from scenarios that happen organically in public where somebody needs help. The things that came around most readily were subway footage, surveillance camera stuff from emergencies. And we started to find that, in fact, the more people witness something, the more likely it is that someone will intervene. In a non-laboratory setting, people are more likely to become an upstander the more people watch something. And this goes against what a lot of us know about the bystander effect and sort of what is commonly accepted about what happens when a lot of people experience something. It's you assume that somebody else will call, so you don't call. But that theory has had a huge influence on people's perceptions of humanity as a whole. It really encourages people to think of humans as a largely apathetic species when we are, in fact, incredibly socially motivated. This is a lot of background, but there's a point that I want to make, which is that I want you to shift your thinking today. By becoming an upstander, you're not learning to resist your human impulse to ignore it, but you're giving yourself the tools to be able to act on your human impulse to help. So I want you to know that you're not working against your brain and trying to figure out how to be an active bystander. You're trying to give yourself the tools to act on our human impulses, which is to help people when they're in distress and to want help when we are in distress. So let's think about some real situations. I've got a few things here. 4 situations. We'll start one at a time. You can look ahead if you want. We're going to get to it when we get to it. But we'll start with number 1. I want to read it to you, and I want you to just think about 1 through 5, how likely you would be to intervene in a situation like this. Intervention here does not necessarily mean going up to someone and telling them that what they're doing is wrong. It's anything other than ignoring it and walking away. 1 is not likely at all to intervene. 5 is likely to intervene. Pop it in the chat if you can. We'll start with number 1. I want you to remember there are no wrong answers, and we're not trying to impress each other right now. We're going to think about these reasons as we go through. So number 1, a student is being filmed by a group and told to say specific things for the camera. They're looking down and shifting their stance. We have 1 through 5.
Eli, is this within the context of robotics, or is this just like you were walking through the school or outside the school and you had seen this?
That's a good question. The intention here is that it's vague, right? So if you want to think about it in terms of robotics competition, we'll get into more specifics like that later. But that's absolutely one of those things that might change your likelihood to intervene is what is the context that you're in. We'll say it's robotics for the sake of this. Got a 4, 3. Another 4, 4. Yeah, I like that clarification. If it's a student on your team, There are a lot of things that are going to make you more likely to intervene in this situation than not. If you're walking past this on the street on your way into the grocery store, you're going to be probably much less likely to intervene in that situation than if it's students that you know personally. Number two, a student you don't know is being scolded by an adult you don't recognize. The adult has cornered the student who looks like they might be crying. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, 5, a 2. Looking at different ends of the spectrum. Yeah, 5, stop and assess. 2, without context, that would make you hesitate. Yeah, this is one of those ones where you get things from all over the map here. What I want you to pay attention to is not whether or not you are more likely to intervene in a situation, but what are those context clues that are coming up for you? What are the things where you're like, well, but I wish he'd given this context because that would change how I might answer that. Those are important. 3, you overhear a group complaining about something. One student says, "Oh, that's so gay," and the group laughs. No one overhears them except for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 5, a 4, 4. Yeah, they're on the higher end of the section. Yeah, this is one that I pulled from my experiences directly in speech. Yeah, but it depends on the context. Again, absolutely. One of the big things here is that no one overhears them, right? And so, does that hurt anyone? Does it not hurt anyone? I often hear folks, yeah, you're someone, you overheard it. But also, the other students in that group are someone. They were engaging in it, but they also overheard it. They're hearing those implications of what is good and what is bad. All right, last one. 4, you are walking to your car in a store parking lot when you see 2 people in a heated argument. One of them grabs the other by the arm forcefully. This is the moment where you're making a decision. 5. This one is consistently on the higher end of the scale. Anyone want to weigh in for me on why this one might be easier for folks en masse to lean towards likely to intervene?
We've actually had this happen when we were out walking the dog. We saw a domestic situation like unfolding in front of us and actually it was 2 cars. So we did intervene, but that looked like calling the cops and giving them a description.
Yeah.
And it was quite terrifying, to be honest, because they were racing around in our neighborhood, but definitely 5.
Yeah, that's any kind of violence situation tends to be easier for folks to say, okay, somebody's got to do something about this. But it sounds like you did 2 things we're going to talk about later there, which is delegating and documenting. 2 of the D's we'll talk about later, and that's intervention. That's part of why I clarified at the beginning that intervention is anything other than doing nothing, because it isn't always the safe option to step in directly into a situation. And yeah, like it was pointed out, de-escalation is much more important in this circumstance so that people don't get more hurt as we go through. So yelling at the people involved might not be the right choice, even though that is a type of intervention. All right. So we considered a few reasons why people might not act in situations where intervention might happen. These are the most common reasons we see when we look at broader sociological studies, and when we ask people who were in situations what their decision-making criteria was, I didn't know what to do. That's a big one. What do I do? If you don't know, you can't do it. I was afraid I'd make it worse. This is a big one. And this is what we see is causing the bystander effect broadly, is that it's not that people are assuming that someone else will do something. It's that people are assuming that they're the least qualified person to step in. And when someone believes that they might be more qualified, they will step in. We see when people are trained for CPR, they're more likely to step in when CPR is needed. When people are trained bystanders, they're more likely to step in when bystander intervention is needed. But this is also that sort of authority situation. You know the students involved, or you have an authority position, right? That gives you that kind of credibility. Yeah, weighing your physical safety into a situation is a huge part of that decision-making process. No one else seemed concerned. That plays into those social cues we're looking for. I used to do this training with a lot of fraternities, and the big one that we heard over and over again in those settings, I didn't want it to seem like I thought they were incapable of handling it. It's that I don't want to seem like I'm disrespecting you by implying you might need help. I didn't have enough context. That shows up all the time, right? We already talked about that. The risk of intervening is too high. Like Nicole said, yeah. I was afraid it would turn on me, or the person harassing them was my friend. That peer pressure is a big one as well. They're not all bad answers, right? Some of them might be actual legitimate reasons not to intervene, but for most of them, there's an underlying emotion here. Can anyone pick it out?
This is Candace Loger. I would say fear.
Yep. There you go. Fear. The most common reason people don't act is because they're afraid. Really what I want to get at here is that there are a lot of reasons why you might not want to act, and it is important to acknowledge those and consider them. But if you're finding that the thing you're running into is fear and not a legitimate concern for your safety, but over and over again that you're not sure, that you're afraid to step in, I want you to remember that afraid people can also act. A lot of the time, people find themselves in situations where they're learning to be a bystander, and they get caught on this hurdle of, well, I'm a very fearful person, or what if I was afraid in this circumstance? How do I become unafraid so that I can help people? And the point is that your fear is actually what helps you recognize when someone needs help. When you are afraid for them, that's a really good clue that you might need to step up. And so if you are only acting when you are unafraid, got to get a little more comfortable with acting while afraid. Do it scared. Do it scared. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about a path to deciding to intervene that you can use instead of using fear. This part right here is a flow chart because I like flow charts. If you don't like flow charts, you can ignore this slide. But how do we decide? How do we decide to intervene or not? First, you have to notice the event is happening. Something is happening. Somebody needs help. A lot of that is coming from social cues. Anybody want to give me some things that might clue you in that somebody needs help in a situation? What might somebody be doing? What might they look like? That might clue you in that you should step in and help.
Body language.
Yeah, what kind of body language?
Fear, pulling back, something like that.
Shrinking.
Shrinking. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Trying to make your body smaller is a big one for when people are afraid. They stop interacting. Yeah, someone shuts off. They back away. They're looking around for help. That's a huge one. Not just if they're trying to look around and make eye contact with people, but also if they're looking around for exits. That's another big one.
Or avoiding
Uh,
eye contact might be another one.
yeah. Yeah, either of them. And also not just shrinking, but like becoming fidgety, restless, making themselves move more. A lot of these things just push people in either direction. Um, Anything out of the norm where it looks like someone is really uncomfortable, look a little harder, see what's happening. Um, if someone is in immediate danger, I will also say if somebody's acting like they know you and they clearly don't, you don't know them, that's another big one. I recommend playing along until you figure out what's going on. Okay, and then you have to decide to intervene. We talked a little bit already about barriers to confidently making that decision. Can anybody think of what those might be? Either ones we've talked about already or new ones, specific ones?
Ooh, I have one. I'm a phobia, and we talked about fear earlier, but I was thinking about how some of those contexts that you described sounded like things I'd see at school. And I was thinking
Mhm.
that one of the main things that stop people from acting at school is probably like embarrassment, or they don't want to be like seen as um, kind of an outsider, like, especially the one where you're talking about, like, the gay joke. I think a lot of
Yeah.
times people don't say anything about that because it ends up turning on them or they're seen as too uptight. Like, I've heard those words used against someone who made a comment about that once. So I think a lot of it is just fear of perception, which I guess goes back to fear again, but, like, specifically how other people will see you in that situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a big one, especially when you're in situations where um, these people aren't strangers to you, right? Like if they're your classmates or they're your teammates, where what you say now will be remembered for a while, might have social impacts past just today. Absolutely. Nicole mentioned physical size, stature, or being afraid of getting hurt.
Not knowing what to do.
Yeah, big one. Not being totally unsure of what to do, or also not really knowing what the situation is. That kind of uncertainty can make it hard to figure out what to do as well. Anything else you can think of? Yeah, yeah, afraid that you'll lose your temper and end up being unhelpful. Um, yeah, this is a really common fear and a really fair one too when we're talking about de-escalation. And one that we'll talk about when we get to thinking about self-assessment and what the right choice to intervention might be considering your strengths. Another one is time, right? Just like, do you have time? Do you have time to address this before you get to your next thing? You have commitments, you have obligations, you have places to be. Um, and can you stop and address this? And how important is that going to be? And that's going to change from situation to situation, right? If it's a violent situation, you're far more likely to eschew whatever your obligations are to address that and make sure someone doesn't get hurt. You might be less likely to do that over an overheard conversation, right? There's also always the fear of getting in trouble. What if you're doing the wrong thing on accident? The good thing, and then you choose your approach, you self-assess, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and then you take action. And that's where our D's come into play that we'll talk about in a minute. But the good thing about being in a context with clear rules, like robotics, is that they can provide a guide for at least some situations for you to automatically know that it's time for you to intervene. So here that's assault, threat, harassment, bullying, insults, swearing at someone else, yelling at someone else. Those things are those kinds of no-brainers of you should absolutely intervene. And then emergencies are also an example of a no-brainer. What makes an emergency? Anyone want to weigh in on that? Blood. Yeah, what else?
Immediate physical danger.
Yeah. Yeah, physical danger is happening or it may immediately escalate to that. Yeah. It covers a lot of it. If there is an immediate risk to life, health, or the environment around you, Yep. The burning, bleeding, barfing, broken, or breathless. I will also say any kind of chemicals or any kind of restraint. If someone is being held down, held back physically by other people or by objects in the area, that is an emergency. But anything that has a high probability of escalating to that too. So it doesn't have to just be someone is hurt right now, but someone could get hurt right now in 2 seconds, in 5 seconds, in 3 minutes. I make that point because as we get to our Ds, one of these is not going to work for emergencies. Before we even get into it, just seeing distract, direct, delegate, and delay, which one do you think is not going to be good for emergencies? Yeah, you got it. Delay. Yeah, we don't use that one for emergencies. Everything else is on the table. But yeah, not for emergencies. So methods of intervention, if you spot something that is an emergency, breaks those basic guidelines, or is more unclear, but something clues you in via social cues that you should step in. Sometimes you'll get a choice between these 4 approaches, and sometimes you won't. You should get comfortable with all of them, and we'll practice together in a bit. One of them will not work for you all the time, and one of them will not be best all the time. If, as we go through these, you can think of a real example of something that you've seen that falls into one of these categories, please feel free to chime in. I'm going to go through a couple of examples of each of these. We've got distract. Hey, someone's car is being towed. There's an emergency situation. You have to pull someone away from it, and you can't think of anything else. You can address the room. Hey, something is happening. We've got in social situations, you see this a lot. Come dance with us over here. Come talk to us over here. Hey, we're going out to lunch. Do you want to come with us to pull someone away from a situation? Or there is the classic pretending that you know someone you don't. Oh my God, hi, I haven't seen you in ages. Let's go chat somewhere. We can also do direct. This is that classic, hey, that's not okay. Is this guy bothering you? Are you all right? I have to ask you to leave. All of those things are direct. Delegate. This is calling the cops. This is calling your regional director. This is making an incident report. And then delay. You wait and you go up later. Any instances where you might want to use delay. Anything that you can think of where delay might be the option, either that might be best or that you might choose. Go for it.
I can think of situations where you may want to address the situation outside of a crowd to try, maybe the person didn't realize the behavior was offensive or inappropriate. And so following YPP guidelines, of course, you can't do it one-on-one, but you might take that person aside and talk to them and address the issues that you observed.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't want to do it in front of a group, or sort of on the converse, if you want to do it with someone else, so if it is only one person and you're not comfortable or confident addressing it with the group of people that's there then, and you want to bring somebody else in, you can, whether it's someone that they respect or someone that knows them much better or is better at communicating with that person. Yeah.
Hello, this is Stacy with 2472, and sometimes the delay, if you see this and you're not sure it's isolated, maybe we're going to talk to the whole group and just kind of bring it up and reinforce that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. That if it's not just a single interaction, but something that either has happened before or you could see happening, and it warrants just addressing the situation as a whole with a whole group, absolutely. I will also say a big one here is if you personally aren't sure what the right thing is to say, and it's not an emergency, it's okay to take a little bit to figure out what you want to say. What's going to be the right approach, what the rule actually is, getting some advice from other people, that's normal. Also, pulling someone away from a situation where they might not act like themselves. That peer pressure can be a big thing for everyone, for adults, for students, for all sorts of folks. Sometimes if you're around people that you want to like and respect you, you're less likely to reflect on what you said and did and more likely to defend yourself. So giving someone a moment so that they're not responding immediately can sometimes work best for a situation. Okay. So there's no right choice with all of these. There's simply choices, and you make the one that you make, and you hope it goes okay. And we'll talk about how you're trying to make a decision. But there isn't always going to be one. So we have an example here. You notice a group of students whispering about a Black student nearby who doesn't seem to notice them. You hear the students use a racial slur and they laugh. We've got a lot of options here, but there is in fact one for each of these 4Ds. Maria might approach the student and engage them in a conversation, positioning herself between them and the group. So isolating them, getting them away from this group who might hurt them if they start to hear what's going on. Dustin approaches the group and says the language they're using isn't acceptable. Patricia immediately contacts an authority figure. Jasper has somewhere to be, but later approaches the students and their mentor in the main area. Let's think about these for a second. What approach would Maria have taken if she engaged the student in conversation directly?
Phobia. Be distracting the person who is being made the scapegoat of the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, distracting the person who is the target in this situation. Crucially, not distracting the group. What approach did Dustin take when he addressed the group? He went up to them and talked to them about what they were doing.
This is Scott. It was a direct interaction.
Yep, that's the straightforward, direct interaction. Patricia contacted an authority, that's delegate. Jasper delayed, but still did something. The crucial thing about delay is that it's not the same as ignore. It's an intentional choice to put time between the incident and the intervention. All right. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Phomia.
Okay. Sorry, Eli, to interrupt. I'm not sure if you're going to talk about this later on, but I was just wondering. I know you said there's no like one right choice, but do you have suggestions for like how to know in a situation if like you'd be more effective being like less direct and not necessarily addressing the people who are making the joke or the mean comment, and would it be more effective to just like talk directly to the victim?
Yeah, I in fact do have a recommendation for how to make that decision. And the first part of it is figuring out what you're going to be good at. Because some things are going to be more effective with addressing the situation, but if you can't do that, it doesn't matter if that's the most effective approach if you're not able to move forward with that approach. So the first thing that I always recommend is doing a quick self-assessment when you're in a situation that you think might need an intervention, to consider your safety, your social context, and then your personal strengths to figure out what you're going to do. So maybe if you're the kind of person who is comfortable and confident addressing your peers, or you consider yourself a very eloquent or well-spoken person, or simply comfortable, extroverted, you might be really good at direct intervention. If you struggle to control your tone, I know we had a little chat about that in the chat earlier, then maybe direct is not the right approach for you. A lot of this comes down to what you're going to be good at and what you're going to be able to do in any given situation. So are you at heightened risk? Would intervening put you in danger? How do you react when you feel unsafe? This last one is big. For me personally, sometimes when I feel unsafe, I have a hard time controlling my tone. And so I start to get louder, or I start to sound more aggressive even. And so when I feel unsafe, I know I'm probably not going to pick direct. If I don't feel unsafe, I might pick it because I can control myself and my tone. But if I know I'm in a situation where that's going to be a problem, then I won't pick direct. I'll pick something else. There's social context. So are you in an authority position here? Then direct is probably going to work okay for you. Do these people respect you? Then direct is probably going to work okay for you. Do they not? Do you not know them at all? In that case, I don't know what kind of social clout that you're pulling here. And maybe the better thing to do is delegate or delay. How are you perceived in this room? What are your personal biases? And then strengths. What reactions are you feeling that you have, right? What are you most and least confident doing? I know a lot of people who are very confident actors and can pull off a lot more distracting things than I can personally. I might not be able to, pretend that something is happening that would draw people's attention. I would have a hard time thinking of that in the moment. And so I wouldn't choose distract there. Does that help answer your question at all? Okay. And then I want to share a few pointers on each of these really quick, but we've spent quite a bit of time in Eli talking land. So if you can think of any real life examples as we talk through these, feel free to interrupt me and share. I know that things have happened that you've stepped in on before in your life, or you've witnessed other people do it. And most of them are going to fall into one of these categories. So take a gander, think about it. And as I talk about distraction, feel free to pop things in the chat or come off mute, raise your hand. Distraction, we've talked a couple of things about, should be used to protect someone, not to avoid addressing something. And you can use something relevant to the people or the environment. So if it's a social situation, you can use that. If it's a random encounter, maybe make a scene. In larger conflicts, you can use broader tools like using your voice, using your phone, staging a phone call that's really loud and takes up all of the attention in the room. Any examples of real life distractions that you've seen happening?
Dave from but I'm trying to think of how to put it. A conversation that you could tell somebody was uncomfortable, and actually in robotics, distract, kind of a combination of distract and delay. Distracting an individual by pulling them away from the conversation that was happening, but then addressing it with a delay after the distraction. With the other individual.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these can be used in combination with one another. I would say distraction and delay are paired together a lot of the time, as well as direct and delay. Any other in your broader life as well, in media, anything that you can think of as a circumstance where somebody just used distraction to de-escalate a situation?
At work, this is Michelle. At work, sometimes when we've had when in person, when you've had maybe somebody very belligerent, and you can tell the conversation isn't going anywhere, and we're at a point where we need to pull the person away that's engaged in it. At times we'll be like, oh, you ring the phone and then you pick it up and just be like, oh, so-and-so, I need you to take this phone call. I'm sorry, sir. We're going to have to follow up. When you're working in public service sales type situations, it's been a good way to kind of end that conversation for them and get them distracted in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're trying to interrupt a phone call or any kind of conversation, you can make an excuse and pull yourself away, come back when things have settled down. Absolutely. Stacy, did you have something?
Yes, I've used before where, especially in a location I'm maybe aren't familiar with, but you see something going on and I've walked up to the group and asked for directions someplace, or, hey, can someone point me in the direction of this? And then they usually kind of dissipate in those scenarios on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely seen that happen too, where something is getting a little bit too heated and someone steps in and just doesn't directly address what's happening, but asks for directions or asks if you went to high school together or, etc. Absolutely. Okay, direct communication tips. The thing with direct communication is that it's really tempting for you to intend direct communication to be a learning experience, and to make sure that you're saying all of the right things to make sure this doesn't happen again. A big thing to consider with direct communication is whether or not you're trying to teach something or whether or not you're trying to prevent it from escalating further. And if it's a de-escalation, direct intervention, if they're not getting it, if you're trying to tell someone that what's happening is inappropriate, that they can't do what they're doing, and they're not getting it, the point is not to get them to get it. It's to help the situation calm down. So remaining calm, respecting people's personal space, controlling your tone of voice, avoid challenging what they're saying or what they're doing if it starts to escalate further. And then using I statements, or at the very least, avoiding using the word you, because that can automatically put our brains on the defense. But the point of direct communication is not always to make people understand why what they're doing is wrong, but to make sure it doesn't continue to escalate into something worse. Any anecdotes around direct communication that you've witnessed?
I have something. This is a phobia. I was just thinking about how in conflicts, specifically on the robotics team, in conflicts between students, usually if it's something more explicit, like someone uses a word that's disrespectful towards any group at all, that's kind of easier to be more in terms of direct communication. It's easier to do that, especially as a captain. And we talked about like having some kind of um, I guess some kind of level where you would feel comfortable like telling people not to do something or even in
Mhm.
any scenario, but when it's more explicit like that, it's a lot easier to use direct communication compared to like a situation where someone's being made fun of, but it's framed as a joke. So then I think about how sometimes like I feel uncomfortable using direct communication then because I'm like, I also don't want to embarrass this person if it's just an interpersonal joke. So then it's more distraction. But yeah, usually direct communication for more explicit bullying or using slurs or bad words.
Yeah, and particularly if you do have some kind of cred with that group of people or those students, right? Is like if you have any kind of authority over them, but also just if they respect you. A lot of the time, like if people think that you're smart and they want you to like them, they're more likely to be receptive to direct communication than if you're not someone that they would give the time of the day. Um, that's just the reality of how a lot of social situations work out. Any other direct communication anecdotes? This one I will say is the least interesting of them. Um, it is what you see when someone acts up in a coffee shop and they tell them to get out. It's what you see when someone is being too belligerent in a restaurant, and a manager has to come and tell them that they have to leave if they can't get themselves together. Yeah, this is a big one with people that you are intimately close with too, like your siblings, your parents, your friends, that whenever they do something that you think somebody needs to say something about, you're choosing direct communication. Okay, delay. We've talked a little bit about the biggest thing is that this one is not an emergency use situation. Choose this one if you think a person would be more receptive to feedback. If they're away from peer pressure, if they're more sober or emotionally stable, or once they've been alone with their thoughts for a little bit. Or if you think that you would have more impact after having time to think. But make sure that you think about whether or not you're delaying because you're nervous to step in or because it truly is the right one to choose for you and for that situation. And then delegation. What are the qualities that you're looking for in delegation? You can't just delegate to anyone. Are you delegating to somebody who's an authority figure? Are you delegating to somebody who has specific pull with this group of students? Are you trying to delegate to someone intimidating, someone confident, someone that they find non-threatening, someone who might know what to say better than you do? You want someone who will de-escalate, not someone who will challenge what's happening in a way that will escalate the situation. Other than calling 911, any delegation anecdotes that anyone wants to share?
This is Scott. I have some perhaps maybe more general advice around delegation. Within the FRC world for mentors, there is an overwhelming majority of mentors who are volunteers. That means they're not on contract with the school, which means the school has zero incentive to try to fall on the side of the volunteer if there's an angry parent. And so that's a very dangerous situation to be in as a mentor, where you're, and I recognize that I have bias here, having seen this happen to a fellow mentor within FRC. But a mentor who steps in to do the right thing will often get stepped on by the district, by the administration, because it's much easier to just remove a volunteer from a program than to try to resolve an issue because of an angry parent. And while this may be stereotypical, there are many parents who believe their children cannot do anything wrong. And so, as a parent myself, there's always that inclination to defend your child. But there are some parents who don't know where that limit is. And your inclination as a mentor to step in and try to resolve, fix, stop an issue that might be happening may be the one that costs you your job as a volunteer. And so delegation may always be the right choice for most situations as a volunteer. I don't like that. I'm not generally a person who will stay on the sidelines, and invariably it will probably get me in trouble someday. But it is important, I think, to recognize the environment that we work in as mentors and as volunteer mentors, that this is an important consideration if you want to stay involved with the team.
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. I will say too that delegating in a situation like that is definitely not staying on the sidelines. That doing anything about it, whether it's finding someone who is more equipped or more protected to step into that situation, is intervening and is an admirable way to step into a situation that you think needs intervention. I will say too, that's maybe one of the qualities that you're looking for is somebody who has either more legal or more social protection than you do in any given situation. It sounds like here that's maybe someone who isn't a volunteer, where if you are the one who steps into that as a volunteer, you do not have the protection to be able to ride that out the same way that someone else that you might delegate to does. And that is a big reason why, too, we have methods of reporting things, reporting incidents as they happen, is not just to protect the students and participants, but also to protect the people who are involved, who might get stepped on if they step up. Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about tech really quick, because I don't know if any of you who have done bystander intervention before noticed that there's usually 5 Ds, and I left one of them out. The one that I left out is document. And the reason I left it out is because I don't believe that it should be a separate D. I think that it is part of all of them. If you are delegating to somebody else, you should be documenting what you saw and when you called and who you told about it. If you are directly engaging, you should document that. Not by filming it, by writing it down afterwards, by making sure that you remember what happened and when it happened, so that if people have questions later, you can answer them. This is especially important when it's a situation that might take a while to resolve, where you might not remember exactly what happened and when and who was involved a while after the fact. Documenting it when it happens is really important. And again, this is not filming everything that happens. It's just having a space where you can write something down, text it to yourself, anything so that you're not relying only on your memory for something like this. If you are delegating or documenting or delaying, all of those things need documentation in some way, shape, or form, just to protect you at the very least. And you can, filing an incident report is documenting. You don't have to also then put it in your notes app, but if you want to, you can. Tech also is great for easy reporting, for access to expectations and rules, having them on you. And then emergency services, of course. The bystander intervention world has changed a lot since the 60s because of all of these things, in part, and because of what we know now about the psychology and sociology of bystanders. Okay, let's do some stuff together. I've got a couple of scenarios here. Let's see. Where I would like you to consider not what you would do as a bystander, but what you would want somebody else to do for you if you were the subject in this situation and did not witness it. And you can consider this and talk about it out loud or pop it in the chat. But we'll start with this first one. You don't witness this, but a group of people you consider friends are making fun of your appearance behind your back. You don't have to phrase this in one of the 4 Ds. You can if you want to. But organically, what would you want somebody to say or do if this was happening behind your back?
I would probably want someone to say, how would you feel if that was somebody was saying that about you behind your back?
Yeah, absolutely. Addressing it right there and then. Okay, does that seem like a nice thing to say? Anyone disagree? Yeah, also wanting to know that a lot of the times people will fall on either side of the camp here, right? I either definitely don't want to know or I definitely do want to know. But even if they don't directly say something, telling you that this was happening could be considered delegating or delaying. To delegate to you who is more directly involved, or to delay and figure out what you want to say and talk about it once you've had a moment to process that information. What about this second one? You use a word that you didn't know was offensive. And unbeknownst to you, it makes the people around you very nervous and uncomfortable. What would you want someone else to do for you in this situation? Yeah, Fomia.
I actually have a funny story about this one. Or actually, it's not really funny, but I guess it's funny looking back on it. I think it was like 5th grade, and I had a friend that thought it was funny to try to get me to say a very offensive word that I did not know it was offensive. If I knew what it meant, I would not have said it. but they were basically saying, yeah, this is like a new trend or something on social media. And obviously, I was in fifth grade. I didn't have any access to social media or whatever, so I couldn't like verify that. And so I said the word, they got me to say it. And then I had someone else who was sitting at that table. And I could tell that everybody had like a nervous or uncomfortable reaction to the word that I said, but I didn't know what to do about it. But I know that I appreciated it when someone at that table addressed both me and the person who was trying to get me to say the word directly. Like, first, they told me directly that that's not a word that I should be saying. And so it was kind of easier to de escalate the situation when someone directly called me out and we didn't have to like keep moving on as if I hadn't said something bad. But they also took the time to address like the person who was originally trying to get me to say the word. So I think addressing both parties and being direct would be most helpful in that situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a great example of, yeah, be direct. Tell someone so that they can learn from it. And people will have different opinions about this too, of whether or not they want you to say it there then to them, or pull them aside in private and say, hey, that wasn't cool. I would recommend not using that word again in public. Everyone wants something slightly different, but I would say most people want to know, so that they don't make the same mistake. This last one, you just received very bad news and are having a panic attack in a public place, perhaps for the first time. You don't know anyone there. What would you want someone to do for you in this situation? Yeah, asking if you're okay, just directly going up to you, protecting you, yeah, from others' observation or ridicule, or just filming you. Would anyone want something different from that? Yeah, how can I help? Probably not like pointing you out in front of a giant group of people and saying, "Hey, over there at that person." Um, yeah, not letting anyone film. But right, approaching them one on one, moving them to the side, doing that privately, or finding space for it to be one on one rather than addressing people as a group, for sure. Yeah, some people would not want to be approached by a stranger in this circumstance, right? Who would be intimidated by being approached by a stranger or scared, particularly when you're experiencing a mental health incident for the first time ever. How someone's nervous system is going to respond to that is going to be very different, and they might not respond positively to being walked up to and addressed by some random person after they just get really, really bad news. Um, but the point that I would like to make with all of this is that there are a lot of ways that you can respond. Largely, you're using your best guess as a bystander. There is no way to read the mind of the person that you're trying to help, and make sure that you're responding in the exact way that they would want someone to respond to the situation. All you can do is make your best guess and do something. And that something is almost always going to be better than doing nothing, even if it's the wrong thing. Um, the wrong thing is often better than nothing at all, at least when it comes to stepping up and stepping in. Yeah, with the panic attack based on their reaction to you, figuring out what they might need and moving them to other people or away from them, something like that. Absolutely. Yeah, those context clues are huge, right? And you're playing it out as it's happening. But the first thing you try is often going to be a best guess. And your job as a bystander is not to try to figure out exactly what somebody else wants you to do, but what you're able to do so that you don't do nothing. All right. Now we've got some scenarios, and these are flexible. I want to talk about them together as a group. Again, I'm a big fan of the chat if you want to use it and you don't want to come off mute, but I'm more than happy to have folks talk out loud too. If you want to bring up a real scenario you've encountered or talk about something that you think could happen and you want the group to weigh in, this is the perfect time to do that. as we go through these scenarios. So please feel free to use this as an open floor with the structure of we'll keep going through the scenarios. Derail me at any point. All right. We've got scenario 1. You hear a robot drive team made up of only boys complaining that they've been partnered with a team of only girls. One of the students on the first team says it's demeaning and embarrassing to compete alongside girls. A few of the other boys nod. Some of them just look away. We've got 3 options here. If you can think of another one, feel free to throw it in. We've got one option for direct. You approach and explain that disrespecting teammates and competitors isn't tolerated. You document and report this. It's going to happen throughout. Delegate, you stay in the area, contact your regional director or somebody else that maybe, like Scott said, has a little bit more protection than you do to address that. Or delay, you note the names of the team, the individuals, document, report it later. Don't address anything right away. Feel free to drop in the chat which one you would be more likely to choose. Yeah, I would say that for a lot of these, if we're talking about events, you will probably be reporting it. Any incident, medical or non-medical, any situation. Again, a lot of things are just going to go better if you document them, no matter what happens at the result of it. And then that would be up to the group to decide what the right thing to do is in this situation, particularly for the comfort and safety of the girls' team. Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
One of the things that occurs to me here is that, you know, in hindsight, I would probably not think of this in the heat of the moment, but in hindsight, my thought would be that to approach the boys and say, did I hear you right? Is this what you said? Because it's very easy to make a report and say, I never said that. That's not what we said at all. So rather than to try to correct the behavior, I feel like it would be important to get verification that you heard what you heard and they know that you heard what you heard. Because otherwise, I don't think the report is going to do anything, honestly. I'm not sure about that, but I feel like rather than trying to correct the behavior in a direct way, I think it might be good just to make the students aware that you heard what they said, give them a chance to maybe backtrack on it. But if nothing else, it can't be a situation when they said, no one heard me say that. I never said that. That didn't happen. So I worry about a report without verification doesn't do any good.
Yeah, absolutely. Afomia, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking what Scott said made me wonder, like, if there's anyone on the call right now that could explain, like, how the reporting system actually works. Because I know this is something that I'm curious about, like, at school, like, when you report a scenario or a situation, like, what actually happens afterwards, or, like, maybe if that's something that, like, I could factor into thinking about when I address something then and there, and when I would wait for the report to go through.
So I think that's me. I'm not able to speak to what happens at your school. Sorry. I can speak to what happens at a first event or program. If it is a program that I am present at, typically I encourage mentors to report directly to me while I'm at the event, because when you file a report, which I always still encourage, depending on what else is going on in First World, it may not bubble up to the surface until weeks later. And at that point, we're all gone and there's no frame of reference. A lot of people are going to forget what was said or done. And it is a whole lot easier for me to have a gentle conversation with someone and verify all sides of the story when all sides are still present. So that's one of the things that we put in the team event guide for the mentors, to, as much as possible, both document and ask for myself at the event so that I can take care of that right away and we don't have to wait and lose that precious time.
Thanks for that, Nicole. Yeah, I think the big thing to think about here too is that a big priority is making sure that we address the behavior that's happening that isn't okay, and specifically to address it to the people who are doing that. But I will also say that a big priority here too should be making sure that girls team feels welcome in the space, and that this doesn't escalate to further exclude them and make them feel like they aren't welcome. And that's again with direct. A lot of the time, it's really tempting to turn it into an educational experience, and it should be. But it should also be prioritizing the people who might be most hurt in this and making sure that they're getting what they need. And I think a lot of the time that is like seeing someone go up and say, "Hey, that's not okay. That's not cool. You can't say that." But it is also making sure that they're able to continue to participate to the best of their ability, even if that boys team is not receptive to the feedback they might get. Awesome. Thank you all for weighing in on that one. Okay. A few students on a drive team have pride flags on their belongings. You overhear a student in a neighboring pit make a comment about burning a pride flag in the other pit. No other volunteers or mentors hear this. We've got some options here again. You approach the student, explain that targeting another group because of their identity is unacceptable. You take their name. Delegate, you contact your regional director if Nicole is there. File a report. Again, that documenting reporting is going to go along with all of these. Or delay, you don't get up the courage that day to say something, but it bugs you, and you contact your regional director later, or someone who can help, and try to remember what happened to the best of your ability. Any other options are also welcome here if you want to pop that in the chat. But which one would you be likely to choose? Direct, delegate, delay? All three. Well, if you're doing the first two, you can't delay. If you're directing and delegating as it's happening. But it will probably bug you for a while. Yeah. But yeah, directing and delegating. I would say in a lot of competition environments, and again, for those reasons Scott mentioned as well, a lot of things are going to be best to delegate, but not everything. And sometimes you won't be comfortable only delegating. And sometimes it might be a situation that has to be addressed right there and then. Would anyone do something else?
I think for delegating, I'm trying to like imagine this happening at a competition to see what my actual reaction would be. But I think first I would be direct first and just address it because that's just such like a shocking statement. I feel like I would have to say something directly to the people. But then also, I think I delegate to a mentor actually first. Either if it's like somebody else's team, I'd probably talk to one of their mentors because they know the student better, or like we talked about how the problem with delaying is that you might not contact them later or you'd forget their name. But then maybe if you weren't as comfortable being direct, I wonder if you could delegate to like a mentor on their team or your own mentor instead.
Yeah, that's good remembering of those, like who might they respect, or who might know more about them, or who might have more authority for them socially, because this is very much one of those social situations where you want someone to address this that they might listen to, and that isn't everyone. And so if you can find someone who they might listen to more, yeah, take them aside ASAP to explain what you heard. Yeah, again, I think this is one of those where if you don't step in right away, it's really hard to prove that anything happened later. And so doing both of those, making sure that something is happening right away, but also that someone gets involved that has a little bit more protection than you in that situation, and that we get it documented.
The
All
other
right.
thing is
Yeah.
also Scott's approach of questioning it too. Did I hear that correct? Kind of creates that pause and them self-reflection at that point too.
Oh yeah. And particularly if this is a group, um, and in the last one, I think this is the case as well, of like a few of the other boys nod and some look away, where if you do clarify with the group, hey, did that just happen? You might be giving those other students a chance to say, yeah, actually that wasn't cool, I was not okay with that happening. And then you get a group conversation and realize that the first person who speaks maybe doesn't speak for the whole group. I think that's really important too. Thank you. All right. We have a volunteer near you sees another individual's pronoun sticker and says to another adult, I can't believe they're giving into this pronoun stuff. You're either a woman or a man, or you're delusional. The person with a sticker looks uncomfortable and walks away. We've got a couple of options here too. Delay, you don't want them to turn on you, so you don't say anything in the moment. Later, you contact your regional director by email or someone else who's able to pass along the message and explain what you overheard. Direct, you go up to the person, you say that's not a very respectful thing to say about another person. Direct, you approach the person with the pronoun sticker, ask if they're all right, introduce yourself, mention that you're going to report what you heard. These are two different directs where you're approaching different parties in the situation, depending on what you're comfortable with. Or delegate. You think that feedback would be more impactful coming from authority, or if you know the situation, the folks around, you delegate to somebody who knows them well and who they respect, who might listen to them better. What are you more likely to choose in this situation? You can call them direct 1 and direct 2 if it helps. Yeah, 3, then 4. I think some people's impulse is to approach the people who didn't do something helpful or in any situation, aggressing in the situation. And some people's instinct is to approach the person who might be getting hurt in the situation. And that depends on both your impulses, but also your strengths. Yeah, you really need to get the volunteer's name to report them. That figuring out your priorities for reporting. Yeah, and considering your social situation, right? Are you a student there? Are they an adult? Vice versa. And then checking on the person who might be hurt in that situation. Anyone else want to weigh in? Yeah, direct 1. And that again, like feeling like you know what to say is a big thing there too. It is if you've had a moment of practicing in your head or considering like if this happened, this is what I might say. You might be more prepared to choose direct here. If this is something you have never encountered before as a potential social situation until it's happening in front of you, you might not be as prepared to choose that direct route. How do we feel about delay here? Can you imagine a situation where that might be the right choice for someone? And this is the last thing I'm going to make you do. Yeah, Stacy, you want to kick off?
I could see where delay, depending if you're crunched for time and when this happens, say you were at a competition and your group is up, that might be the right call to not distract the rest of the group from something and address it later on. But I'm more likely to say not cool, dude. And but that's me personally, and I've got my own situation, of why that's that'd be the hill I die on, type of thing. But everyone comes from a different place, and I recognize that.
Yeah, delaying maybe if there's a time crunch. Anyone else have an opinion about delay? Sometimes in situations like this, someone will choose delay because they might personally be at risk in a situation like this because of their identity or because of the things people know they're involved in, right? If this is a similar situation to a racial slur example that we saw at the beginning, if you are part of that marginalized group, it might not be safe for you to be the person who steps in and addresses that. And so delay might be why you choose that as well. Yeah, Scott.
My thought here is that you've said this is a volunteer, so this is an adult. An adult who holds this opinion is unlikely to be regretful or to change their behavior because of a direct, immediate confrontation. And my guess is it would probably just get worse. So that would be a situation where maybe delay is the right choice.
Yeah, I will say I think you're right. Like in a situation like this where the adult, where this is an adult and you're not likely to change that attitude, you might change their behavior in the future though. You probably won't change their mind, but it might be able to give them that cue of like, oh, if I say something like that here, it's not always going to go over well. Maybe I shouldn't do that in this context. And so both of those things I think can be true.
But in your scenario, a delay is not going to matter if it's talking about the next competition, right? Whether you talk to them in the moment or you talk to them at the end of the day or next week. So my inclination here would be to delay because I don't want to make things worse right now, especially for the people who are around who that conversation might escalate, and the words that are said may be even more harmful. So my inclination here would be to delay because I just don't think I'm going to make a positive impact by an immediate direct response.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a huge reason why delay is the best choice in a lot of situations is you don't think that stepping in then as yourself will make it better, but make it worse. Yeah, and then making sure that this is told to somebody because, right, that is not okay for an adult at this organization. All right, I'm going to put this on the screen, but I will also make sure that it is available to you in some way, shape, or form. After, I will ask that you only fill out the evaluation if you attend the live session. If you are watching this later, don't fill out the evaluation. It will be closed, so you will not be able to. But if you're willing to, I would love that and appreciate that. I'll pop it in the chat as well so that you can click on it as a link if you would like. And I'm going to stick around for questions or if folks want to chat about anything that they want help troubleshooting or have learned, feel free to. But I'm not going to try to keep you past 8:30. So thank you for having me, and I'll be here for a moment at the very least.
Thank you, Eli. This was wonderful.
Yeah, so before we stop the recording here, does anybody have any questions immediately that they want to try to get on the recording? Otherwise, we can end the recording here. And then if anyone has anything they'd like to ask off the recording, then we can do that as well. So final call, going once, twice. Anyone?
I actually had a question that I was thinking about throughout the meeting. Eli, I was wondering, what do you recommend doing in a scenario where maybe it's an interaction between two people and you try to address the scenario, but the victim says that it's okay or they don't need help? but you still feel maybe unsafe or uncomfortable about the scenario or whatever's going on. Because I remember running into that a while ago and I wasn't really sure how to address that.
It's a good question. I would say this happens, especially in like real life situations in public more often than not. People are going to decline help that is offered if it's an interpersonal situation where there's some history to it. But I do think that going up and making yourself available for help is one of the most important parts of it. If they decline it after that, that's okay. They have an opportunity and they know that people are seeing it and are willing to help if it escalates. I would also say if that happens, to definitely document what happened. So write it down. If it's just, going about your day-to-day life, stick it in your notes app, write down the day and the time and what happened and what they said, and then go on with your day. But if something happens, at least you know what happened and when and where. But yeah, sometimes you step in and they don't want help, and at the very least you offered, and that's the important part.
I want to follow up too with something that you brought up that kind of hit close to home with me. You had talked about the scenario with someone having a panic attack. We were at a competition one time and one of our students had a panic attack and was physically shaking and really struggling, and they were off on their own, sort of in the back corner of a hallway. And I found this person and I asked if they were okay, and they said that they were, and they just needed a minute. And I kind of sort of double checked, and I said, okay, I'll give you your space. And then I laughed and I went and found another mentor and let them know what was going on and sort of keep an eye out for the student. But what I wish I would have said is, I'm going to go stand over here. I got to send some emails. I want you to come see me when you're ready so that we can leave here together. And I wish I had done that, and I didn't. And so that was a kind of a learning lesson for me, I guess, as a bystander, that it's okay to check and to be sort of refused, that I don't need any help, but I wish I would have stayed in the vicinity just to be sure, because it really bothered me after the fact that I had just gone up to the stands. I kept an eye out for that student, and when they did come up, I checked on them, but I wish I wouldn't have left the area. But I regret that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because sometimes, someone declines help and all you can do is walk away, and sometimes someone declines help and there's a little more scaffolding that you can put in place to be there if they decide to come back for it. And I think especially if you're going to be in the same area, the same building as them, they don't have to find someone else if they do decide they want help after they decline it. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And thanks for sharing, because we can all learn from each other's hindsight, even if we can't go back in time.
All right. Anyone else? Last call. All right. Thank you very much, Eli. We really, really appreciate this. This was fantastic. And I'm very excited that we've all got another thing in our toolkit to help us with FRC and students and mentors. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're a great group.
And with that, we will hopefully see everyone next week. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.